Hello, I'm Colie Otzel. Welcome to America's Salon Academy, the podcast. I believe that success leaves clues, so listen closely as I discuss life and business with some of the world's best hair artists. My guest for today is a celebrity stylist and barber. Many of you are probably using his Barlow barber chair and his signature shears right now in your shop. He has trained with and educated for Aveda, Bumble and Bumble, Paul Mitchell, Goldwell, Woody's, Esquire, and more. He has held titles as Director of Education, Global Educator, and Platform Artist. I am so excited to be talking with the one and only Wallace Barlow. We will be discussing your journey through life and business. So Wallace, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So Wallace and I have been friends sort of in passing for the last couple of years, right?
Yes, ma'am.
We see each other for about, 10 seconds every now and then at a hair show, which is pretty cool to always see you. I did get a chance to actually train with him and learn a few different techniques, a few different times. I would say that you are an excellent educator and a true gentleman. Were you raised in the South?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? What part of the South? Where are you from?
Originally before Atlanta area, Arkansas.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty much where you grew up at then, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So just a few questions, a little bit about your life experiences. I'd really like to dive deep into now we know where you come from. But what did your mom and dad do for a living?
Actually, I was raised a little bit more on the poorer side of the tracks. My mom didn't work a whole lot growing up. She took care of us primarily. She worked, kind of like some part-time jobs at daycares and whatnot, and raised about everyone else's kids, including my cousins and, my friends on the block and whatnot.
That's cool.
She was kind of that mom, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, workaholic. I mean, he was just like a laborer, worked in a factory, ex-Marine, when he wasn't working, he was working.
Right.
He would leave like his full-time job and go do something with like my uncle, there for several more hours. So I honestly didn't see him a whole lot growing up, but have the utmost respect for him.
Right. Wow. I'm sure he taught you a lot about hard work and discipline, huh?
Yeah, definitely. My diagnosis of being a workaholic comes naturally.
Right. Right. So what did you do for fun then when you were growing up?
Oh man, let's see here. I guess I'm a child of the 80s, so definitely music was involved.
Okay.
A lot of concerts. I'm no musician, but I used to fool around with my friends that were in bands and whatnot. So I would say probably a lot of revolved around like music, concerts, that sort of thing.
That's cool. So was it like garage band type stuff or?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where a little bit, not to jump ahead, but I think that's where a little bit of my hair career came in. I think it just sort of worked, kind of fell in place.
Right. So how old were you when you figured out that you wanted to do hair for your career?
Well, I was 19 when I first started doing hair. Whether or not I knew that's what I really wanted to do, I think at 19 I wasn't. I don't think I really had a clue.
Right.
Although I was actually, believe it or not, was on the honor roll and made like 3 to 4 point grade average. I just didn't see myself being like going to college. I just didn't see it. Once I was able to put that pencil and paper down, I was done.
Right. Yeah, it's funny how you feel just like drawn to something. You're not really sure why, but you're just drawn to it for some reason. You sort of have to explore that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what inspired you then to get into the industry?
I would say there was probably more than one element. I know there was more than one person. I had an older sister that always sort of embraced my sort of being eccentric and different guy, whether it was having long hair or earrings or, you know what I mean? Wearing like, edgier clothing, which worked out for me being a poor kid, because in the 80s, all you had to do was rip up some jeans and, tie dye a t-shirt and,
right. And then you were kick ass.
Yeah, exactly. You fit right in. But so
Yeah.
my sister inspired me a little bit. She's like, I really think you'd be good at this. She goes, I know you're not your typical all-American boy that, I don't see you like, wearing polos and this and that, she goes, I think you'd be good at it. And then believe it or not, the barber that used to cut my friend's hair and I, he was actually, even though we wore more of actual styles like skater, or when we cut our hair off and we started wearing something more alternative like a skater cut or surfer, believe it or not, he was the only guy that could actually do these like asymmetrical or disconnected haircuts. We'd go into like a place, and obviously utmost respect for cosmetologists, because I'm a stylist as well as a barber, but they just kind of ran from them. They were like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. But this barber, quote unquote barber, he wasn't scared. He just go in there with his clippers and just get down.
That's awesome.
So I would say he had a lot to do with it. He warned me. He's like, man, he goes, I've almost starved to death on more than one occasion.
Right.
So he goes, I wouldn't tell anybody to be a barber. But at that point in time, I feel like it wasn't that term was not as, it didn't have the sizzle that it has now. I feel like now everybody wants to be a barber. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a culture or like a fad in a way,
Definitely. Yeah, it definitely is. Especially people coming from like the 80s and the 90s. They have got it going on right now because it made its full circle the whole way around as far as like styles and trends. I love it.
Definitely.
All right. So what was like one of your first loves? So you get into a barbershop or you get into the salon and you start actually doing hair yourself. What was like the first thing that you could really connect with, that you really knew that you loved to do?
I think when I don't know if this is if jumping outside the technical is okay, but I knew that I wanted to place myself with a client base that was going to provide the type of living I wanted to surround myself with. I don't know if that makes sense. I have a term I call like attracts like.
Okay.
So obviously I started personally. I think I really feel like I have an advantage in a way, or I'm fortunate per se. I started as a barber and then became a stylist. I feel if I had flipped that, I started as a cosmetologist or stylist and then became a barber. Honestly, I feel like starting as a barber, I had more of an upper hand because I feel like I had a strength with like cutting hair and know exactly what it was going to do when I cut it off.
Right.
Yeah, so I feel like getting into like the chemicals and stuff, it was easier for me personally. I feel like capturing that strength in cutting was huge. But I don't know if it makes sense. I would say realizing that I wanted to do services that were going to put money in my pocket. Because obviously starting as a barber, I was standing in my first shop. I'm pretty sure the cuts were, I think right when I walked in the door, they were $7, and then I think it went to $8.
That's so cool.
So let me tell you, you got to do a lot of those in a day's time to walk out with a decent amount of money.
That's right.
So I feel
That's
like
awesome.
I was dating a girl at the time, and I would go to the salon with her and I would see her getting foils. So, and I would watch what she paid when she left. And right then and there, I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. So I wanted to capture services that could not only enhance my client's beauty, but also work smarter, not harder, put that, higher ticket on the counter, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Yeah, that's really awesome. So let me just ask you this. What was one of the fears that you had to overcome? Was there something that was like difficult for you that you had to work a little harder at maybe?
I actually referenced that very thing in an interview on BehindTheChair.com. Yes, I felt like a story of my life was always something that pertained to money or finances or what have you, because I was that kid growing up that, I didn't have the same caliber of clothes as a lot of my friends did. When I was
Right.
playing football, my cleats didn't match. Um, the cool thing is I was always forced to be different. So,
Right.
because my cleats didn't match or I didn't have the same type of clothing. So it almost is a plus to me now because it strengthened me because I was forced to suffer in that way that it made me a different person and it made me
Right.
stand out. And now I like the fact that I stand out.
Right.
Uh,
It builds character. Yeah.
so I would say my fear was always whatever I do, am I going to do it right? And no matter how much I practice or no matter how good someone else said I was, for me, it was always questionable, if that makes sense. It was
Right.
always like, okay, is that good enough? Yeah, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because I don't feel like my foils look like her foils or whatever. And I can tell I'm sure you possibly can relate if you're on the same page as I am. I mean, I'll be honest, you got to mess up a lot of colors to be a good colorist.
Right.
And
Absolutely. Yes.
maybe messing up is not the word. Maybe as we when I went and taught at Nick Arrojo's Academy in New York, I like what they said. They called them discoveries.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, that is definitely true because you're not going to just get it right every single time. And if you do, it's really not that much fun, to be honest with you. You sort of learn different techniques and learn through doing and through messing up, or, that's sort of the fun of everything. And I would love to learn, like, through the people I worked with in the salon, like, oh, what was that? What did you use? And then you kind of just learn so much more, like, quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And me as a colorist, especially, um, I would say I'm probably one of the most unorthodox colorists you'll ever work with. I mean, I've learned the rules. I've trained with some very intricate, um, methods like Kuhn. I mean, when I went through their color training, I was like, holy crap! I didn't know I was going back to calculus or algebra. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because I just it just I was historically okay. Well, let me put some 7N with some 7, you know, V, and let's some 20 volume, and let's do this. As opposed to there, I mean, there was all these calculations and stuff,
Right.
but it really strengthened me. But I would still say I fall back to that kind of like in musicians, you've got more classically trained, structured musicians, and then you've got guys that just like to rip on a guitar. And so I would be that type of colorist. I just like to get in there and create and be
Just go
creative with
for it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought up about, some of the fears that you had because I think so many people can relate to that. We all feel that way, but not a lot of us talk about it. You see some certain people like influencers and leaders, they're thriving, and you don't really realize that they also have fears. They're also pushing themselves to be brave to accomplish their next dream. So thank you so much for sharing your fear. I'm sure that would help a lot of listeners. Now, did you have any mentors, like specific mentors throughout your career that really helped you? And the second part of that question is, how did you get connected with them?
Oh, definitely. One of my, I would say one of my long time and continued mentors, best friends, and confidants is Ivan Zoot. I'm sure you've seen him
Of course.
around the industry. Definitely one of my
Definitely.
best friends. And, even if it was something that really wasn't necessarily sort of in his book or something that wasn't in his curriculum that he did, he usually knew where to point me. Like, hey, that's not really my strong area, but let me hook you up with this gal or this guy that I think can sort of guide you. But yeah, so Ivan. I came across at a hair show. I was sort of, I don't know about you with your educator or show career, but mine sort of started out with little remnants of work. You know what I mean? Where you just, you do a little pro bono, you know, here
Right.
and there, or you stand back and rent somebody's color bowls, or you stand on the sideline, or, you know, even if you get up there just for one or two cuts and
Right.
show what you got, you know. So I was sort of doing that with a gentleman that actually started Woody's Grooming. Initially, he had left American Crew sometime after they got bought out a time or two, and he started Woody's. So I was the guy that he put his faith in, and he sent me out to some shows. Now I was pretty much working for Haitian wages or little or nothing. I mean, I remember the days when he was just like, "Hey, man, you know, I'll just send you some free product for your shop. That's all I can do for you right now until we get some more, you know, shows and money rolling in and stuff like that." So I remember
Right.
literally grassroots, ground up. So I was working a show, and we were getting ready to get started, and I was kind of walking the floor to see what, you know, I have this thing I do. I don't know about you. I always walk the floor before a show because I want to see what's going on. So when I get on stage, you know, I can sort of project what I'm going to do.
Right.
Um, I was sort of doing that, walking through, meditating, seeing, you know, checking out the setup. And I saw Ivan, and, you know, I'd seen him around. So I walk up to him and I pull a card out and I hand it to him. I said, "Hey, man, you know, I've seen you around the circuit." I said, "If you ever look for any educators or anybody to get involved," I said, "let me know." And so he kind of looks at me, and he goes, "Wow." He goes, "I'm pretty impressed." And he goes, "Most people don't approach me like that." And
Right.
he goes, he goes, "I have no question your ability to cut hair." He goes, "Just by the way you approach me." He said, "What I need to know," and forgive my French, but he says, "Can you sell my shit?"
Right.
And I said, I sort of, you know, got it pretty quickly. Like, he's like, "Okay, yeah, you know, I know you can cut hair. Can you get on stage and do it?" So he says, "I tell you what," he goes, send me a clip, send me a video, send me your information, and we'll go from there." So I said, "Okay." So for me, I'm the type of guy. So I'm falling back to my fears, right? Okay, well, I'm just one of the many that he probably gets mail and videos and whatnot sent to. So what I do is I go back to my booth and I get in my bag and I realize, oh, I happen to have an Andis clipper.
Wow.
So once the show gets going, my mind starts, you know, moving at a million miles an hour, as it always does, even when I'm sleeping.
Right.
I'm like, "Oh, I got an Andis clipper." So every haircut I do, when I start getting up there, you know, kicking ass, shredding some hair, people are crowded around. Hey, you know, and I'm selling product, right? But they start wanting to know, "Hey, what clipper are you using?" So I take that as an opportunity. I'm like, "Hey, you know, here's my card. The Andis booth is right around the corner. Go down here, 1080, yada, yada, yada." And ask for this guy, Ivan Zoot. So every
Nice.
person that references my clipper or comes to the booth, I let him know. After the show, he comes up to me and he says, "Well," he goes, "I just finished talking to a gal that come over and bought like a $200 clipper." And he goes, "Well done, by the way." And he says, "Give me your info. I'll be in touch."
Oh,
So from
wow.
there, he invites me out to a show, and I get on stage. Once again, not a high paying. I'm pretty sure, I think I made like a bag full of $75 worth of swag or something for that show.
Yeah.
But the very next show after that, after he sent me a personal letter saying, "Dude, you killed it. You're in." Very next show, it was me and him together at Premier Orlando. And you talk about
Wow.
hitting the ground running
Right.
from like bits and pieces of hair shows or working a scissor booth or here to on Anda's main stage at Premier Orlando. Can you say,
Wow.
you know, getting on stage and not getting off for a while?
Yeah. So how'd you handle it? How'd the show go?
Oh, huge success. I felt another, you know, great write up. You know, he referenced me on a blog, said, "Wallace, you know, came to Premier Orlando of all shows and just got down. Now, mind you, at that point with Woody's and Andes, not tooting my horn, but to be honest, the men's hair segment was not really anywhere even remotely near what it is now.
Oh yeah,
Literally,
definitely.
we were like a little page or two in the back of the brochure of
Right.
Premier Orlando. We were like kind of like a sideline. Oh, that's where the men's cutting is, or the barbers. So you had, if anything, you had like American Crew, which dominated it, right? As
Right.
always. So there's American Crew, and there's a few peons. You know,
Right.
so you got Crew, you got Wall, you got Andes, you got Oster, and bits and pieces, remnants, you know, like these projects out there that,
Yeah.
you know. So for that point in time, it was kind of a big deal to be like on the stage with Woody's, with Andes. Back to that Fear. I remember on heading up the stage with Woody's. I kid you not. You know, I'm booming. The shows are going well. I'm fired up. My game face is on. Lo and behold, where did they place me? To the left of me is Robert Chromians with Paul Mitchell. To the right of me is Nick Arrojo. Someone else over in there somewhere. And I'm stuck on this Woody stage with a sound system.
Right. Sweating your ass off, probably.
Yeah. So that was the game back then. And now looking at this stuff, like these Barber Cons, these Barber Grammys, these
Right.
Barber Connect, I'm like, dude, where was that when I was like in my prime? You know, now because I'm looking back and I feel kind of like a has-been in a way, and I see all these, like, and forgive me, I mean this with the utmost respect, but millennial Instagram famous folk.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because back in my prime, I had people begging me to get on Instagram. I was like, I ain't got time for that stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm like, you know what? I literally felt that way. It was nothing against it. I said, when you guys are playing on your phone, I'm cutting hair, whether it's on a stage or in a beauty school or in my shop doing 18 to 22 haircuts a day. That's just how I felt, because that's how we did it. That's how we did it old school.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I'm with you. It took me probably too long to actually get on Instagram and start doing stuff because of that. Because you know what? Honestly, when you're really doing hair for real, you don't have time for that. That's what it feels like. But, you know, the game has changed and this is the way that it is. And instead of handing somebody a business card, they now have their Instagram. You know, they can now direct message people. I mean, it's such a quicker way to get where you want to go. But yeah, I didn't see it either. Like when it all first started coming up, I was kind of like, yeah, that's kind of like for those people, you know?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But it's come a really long way. So it's pretty impressive.
No, definitely. And sorry for being windy there. That's just sort of how that's how we make our living, as talking and sharing, you know.
That's right. No, I love it. I would love for you to tell me all the stories you have. There's no problem with that. So, really good question I have here. How long did it take for you to actually be proud of yourself, or to where you felt that you were successful?
Oh man. I would say I've talked to a lot of humble hairdressers in my time, and I really learned that I feel like a lot of them are like, you know, it's not a dollar sign. It's not a how many salons I own or this or that. I really feel like it's just kind of when you accept that you've I don't even know if accomplished is the right word. You just accept that this is where you find yourself in your success, in your dream, everything that you want. Because I can tell you, the 25th floor penthouse dinners with the VPs from the from the manufacturers and stuff, that I've sit there and I've seen the expense checks and almost fell over in my chair at the table because I couldn't believe, you know, the the amount that I saw in that check, or the amount of booze that we consumed, or, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I can tell you, at the time when I was living out of a suitcase doing those shows, I loved every minute of it. I wouldn't trade it, you know, and not to TMI anybody, but, you know, seeing the girls standing on the edge of the stage, seeing the people in the crowd screaming, throwing product out, just rocking, just the music pumping, and, you know, just feeling beyond alive. You know what I mean? And seeing your pictures on print, you know, your work on the cover of a magazine and stuff like that. It's huge, but I still don't think that's it, because I still think there's more out there. I sometimes I don't know if that, you know, for me, I feel like I go in these waves of it. I really, it's like, okay, you know, I'm really proud because, you know, I become part of the Aveda network, or I'm really proud because, you know, I was featured amongst here, or I'm really proud because, you know, I endorsed my own barber chair through Minerva Beauty. I think these are all huge, like what I kind of call sometimes angel moments, like where you go, okay, that's why I do this, or there is a God. You know, I'd have to say definitely started originally back in 91. I would have to say definitely mid 2000s before I would say I felt capable. Even. Okay. Does that make sense at all?
Yes, it totally makes sense.
I think there was a whole lot of heads of hair cut, a whole lot of color bowls, a whole lot of shows worked, videos, trainings everywhere. Yeah. You know,
a lot of dedication.
But I still, you know, don't know if the light bulb went off for me. Like, you know, I think it almost has to, before you really can believe in yourself and believe, hey, I can do this.
Right.
You know what I mean? I see a lot of people throw the towel in on this industry after years of doing it. You know, all of a sudden, you know, you look up at this guy's like, it's like, dude, when did you open a pest control business? Or, you know, or like, I thought you were like, you know, the best on the block at, you know what I mean? But, and I'm not saying that's typical, but I have seen a lot of people just sort of hang it up.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And for me, I don't really know anything else. You know what I mean? I mean, I've got these, through part of my heritage, I've got these grants that I could go back 100% paid to college. And trust me, I've thought about it many a times when I've had like a crisis, or, you know, anxiety attack over something, or stressed out. And I'm like, dude, I've got the answer. I'm going in the medical field. You know?
Yeah. Right.
You know, like, no, that's, you know, no, I'm not. But so I would say probably, well, you know, years later, to where, and then I'd say at least mid 2000s, where I started to really go, hey, this is what this is about.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, success is not always necessarily financially. You know, success a lot of times is in your heart, or in your family, looking at your kids, you know, different things like that, being able to provide, but also having people to share it with, you know, and all those things. So, yeah, I agree with that completely. So thank you so much for your insight. All right. So just a few more questions here. If we stepped into your life today, I'd like to talk about some of the things that we might see. So, are you the type of guy who goes to the gym and drinks smoothies, or are you the type of guy who drinks beer and eats pizza?
Well, although I have been the combination of both, and I would lie if I said I didn't enjoy my days at beer drinking. I would be more of your gym and smoothie guy. Probably a lot of coffee in between there somewhere too. Right. No, I am. I'd say I lead, outside of the chaos of my recent 2-year-old. I'd say I lead a pretty boring life in general in that regards. Pretty tame.
Yeah. So how is it being a dad?
Oh, it's what do I say? It's an adventure.
Right.
um, I doing what I do for a living and my personality, I have to say that I by far consider myself a Monday through Friday Orthodox. Um, I am definitely, I would say, a unique dad. But there are ways that I enjoy that because I feel like I can connect to where the child's at, as opposed to being that sort of more kind of hardcore. Hey, well, I'm going to raise this warrior or this perfect structured human being to go off and be successful one day. I guess I just don't think like that. I guess I kind of want to meet my child where they are. This is your
Yeah.
dream. So guess what? It's my dream.
Oh, that's really genuine. I bet you guys probably do all types of artsy and creative things, huh?
Oh, you can only imagine.
Yeah, that's cool. So do you do like princess dresses and stuff too, or no, not that far?
Yeah, we haven't got like crazy into that, but we do have quite a good time.
That's
I've
great.
relinquished all authority over any of my swagger, like hats,
Right.
cuffs, jewelry, shoes. Yeah, Willow has totally decided if I wear it, she wants it, and it's hers. She says.
Right. That's funny. It is hers though, right? Like
Exactly.
that's cute. All right. So, will you ever retire?
Oh wow. I think there was a time when I was on that circuit jamming, going, I could see myself if the tides align, and I could see myself. I'm not saying discontinue to be in the hair industry, but there was some thought as I probably got close to 50 that I would maybe try to set myself up to maybe pseudo retire and then go off and do something else. One thing that I would love to do, I think it's interesting where the industry is at as opposed to where it was, 10, 15, 20 years ago is, I always thought that after I grinded as hard as I did, I would probably maybe put like a suit on and go into more of the sales side of things with the manufacturers. Because over the years, I feel like I've sort of learned sort of the show industry, the distribution and manufacturing side, working close with them and working close with my VPs. And, generally when a lot of the guys were out sort of, okay, let's go party, we're off stage. I would usually be sitting at dinner with the VPs and the sales guys, sort of listening and sort of
Right.
learning and getting mentored from that standpoint. And I feel it made me a stronger educator because I saw outside of, a lot of educators, I feel like their strong point is getting on stage and captivating the crowd. And I feel very confident in that. But also, I'm the type of guy, I want to know why. Why am I doing this?
Right.
What did we say at Farouk Systems? What's the when, the why, or what are the
Yeah.
four W's? Or
Right. When, who, why, and I don't know. I guess we're not very good.
but yeah, but I wanted to know the big picture of that. I wanted to
Right.
know when I wasn't on a stage or I wasn't in a shop, when I was laying there in bed, when I was on my computer, and I was like, okay, well now you see Esquire at Ulta or Sephora or something like that. Well, why? Well, what,
Right.
well, obviously we want to capture a audience that you may not get from a beauty supply or from a salon, so just
Right.
stuff like that. So yeah, I could see myself retiring in that realm, but as far as like ever hanging it up, I have a saying, barbers don't retire, we die.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's why I had to ask you that question because it really is like that, especially because if you have the heart, you have the love, you have the passion, it's it's not even it's so cliche, but it's not even really work. At some point, like you said, you pretty much did it for nothing. You did it for free because you just love it and you have the passion for it. And so that's why it's hard. It's hard to decide if you'll ever actually retire. So even if you do decide to step back and retire is what we'll call it, you'll still be thinking, your brain will still be moving, and you'll still be wondering. That's, I don't know. For me, that's how it is anyway. Even when I pull back a little bit, I'm still so involved. My brain will not allow me to back out fully.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think it ever
Yeah.
quits.
Right. All right. So I just have one last question for you. And that is, what do you do to bring, say, like calmness or peace into your life?
Well, I used to say that, my vice, my release was work. And although I still find that true, I feel like this last couple of years for me, that has really, what's the word I'm looking for? Surfaced in a different way, manifested,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to say, really, not come to a halt, but come to a reckoning. Um, I had lost my mom this past, about a year and a half ago, roughly. So over the last couple of years, life, if I can tell you, has been insane in one way or another. Um, Personal, work, all the above. Just my existence. There's been one thing after another. And historically, when I found that release, a typical day in the life of Wallace was, okay, um, either getting on a plane or off a plane, say off a plane from a red eye from doing a show, we'll say Orlando, literally driving to my condo, taking a shower, driving to the shop, doing 1822 haircuts, going home, drowning myself in a couple of glasses of bourbon, maybe more than a couple, and
Right.
this cycle of life like that, just going with emotions, just, you know, I call it burning, just burning, you
Right.
know, um, just, you know, there's no time to rest. There's no time to
Right.
stop,
From one thing to the next. Yeah.
Yeah. And so after my mom passed, I'd lost my dad years and years ago. So after my mom passed, for some reason, I always thought I would accept it easier. You know what I mean? Because I'd lost my dad. I'd went through that fight years ago, strengthened me. I thought, this will be easy. It was the opposite. It was almost harder. So I went through that, and I started really trying to be who I was, that guy, doing a show, grinding, going and going. And then I realized that wasn't fixing it. And then
Right.
I'll just leave it as I went to a pretty dark place. Some people call it roaming through the wilderness. You know what I mean? Just in a really dark place. And I'll be honest, it it was pretty dark. And it did affect me personally, and it did affect my career. At first I didn't see it. I was like, I was this 10-foot tall, sorry, I can't talk, 10-foot tall and bulletproof guy. And I was the guy that could, have nothing left in me, hardly even a voice. And, they could be, Wallace, I need you to give it another go, man. We got to empty these pallets at the show, so I got nothing.
Right.
And then just the fact that they were like, we need you, I was like, all right, let's do it. So, persevere. Right.
Yes.
But I found myself not being able to do that. And it was almost just like something inside me was gone. I don't know where it went. I don't know. I couldn't find it. It was lost. And it was scary because it's like a musician without their voice, or all of a sudden they wake up, and they don't have a voice, or they wake up and they can't play that guitar, or something happened. They don't know how. And it wasn't, I couldn't cut hair. I couldn't do hair. I couldn't get on stage and just rock, and, make the show happen. And it was just the magic, the spirit. It was, the flame was gone. So I found myself in that dark place, and it was a little bit of a journey before I got out of there. But I'm sorry just to venture off into that whole history there, but I had to do that to explain that I really had to bring myself back to that higher power, my creator, Because I think that journey, that suffering and that pain and that darkness, I think I had to go through that to get to where I needed to be. And I won't lie to you, I probably got less money sitting in the bank right now and assets and stuff than I probably had 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's me being transparent. But there's also a lot more fulfillment in other ways in my life
Yeah.
now. There's, my family. There's a piece within me that I am okay with me. I do know who I am. I know what I'm capable of. And it, no, I'm not on that same circuit as some of these guys that grew up in the millennial times and that are out there jamming with Cosmoprof. But you know what? Good for them. I'm excited for them. You know what I mean? Because some of these programs I see out there, that I see these young hairdressers involved and the star talent that people are finding, I necessarily didn't have that same avenue. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and it was definitely, I don't know about you, but it was definitely humbling and painful at the same time to get your lunch handed to you. I won't name names, but even on that Farouk circuit, working with people that had sharing the stage with people that had actually been people that had inspired me to be a platform artist, that I remember seeing at little shows over in Oklahoma somewhere and going, when I grow up, I want to be like that guy. And then being able to work with him. I mean, I could never replace that.
Yeah. Well, Wallace, let me just tell you really quick that, backtracking to you just saying that you were being in a dark place and you were being transparent, I appreciate that so much, because there's so many people who go through that and you feel so alone. You feel like it's just you don't know how you're ever going to get out of it. But I feel like a lot of hairdressers, just like musicians, we have really big highs and really low lows. A lot of us do. And I think that was part of wanting to be able to talk and be transparent, is to let everybody else out there know, and the people who are listening, that it's not just you. We all go through it, and it does make you stronger. You just have to keep going through it and get to the end, and then figure it out. And I also think that you start to get older and your life starts to shift, right? And things change and you grow in different avenues and different ways of your life. And so thank you so much for sharing that. That was really special. And then the last thing really is I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and being so honest and so real. And I think that you're really going to help a lot of people realize, like we just said, that you can come from any place, get to where you're going, have the determination. Everybody has fears, but find yourself a mentor, get inspired, and just work your little ass off, I guess, is pretty much to sum up our show today.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I will say, if it's okay, I will say, don't be scared to reach out for help, even if it's with your career, if it's with, like you said, a mentor, if it's or someone that you feel comfortable with just talking to, because I don't only think it will help you with your career, but I think it will help you as a person to find balance. Because I can tell you, looking back, when I thought I had it all under control and I was on top of the world, I was so out of balance. It's not even funny. I mean, but I was just it was almost like you were plugging me into the wall, and that's what I was programmed into doing these, once again, on a plane, off a plane, on a stage, off a stage, in the shop, in a school. You know what I mean? It's just, it's almost like someone put like this disk drive in you, and they just turned you loose.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, this sounds really, super hippie like and whatever, but I started reading like a new book, but basically it was explaining about how to be still. So say you look at a flower, look at the flower, appreciate it for what it is, where it came from, it grew out of the earth and the colors, and it's super hippie like, but really though, in general, just in life, I think that's a lot of us, especially stage artists and people who live out of their suitcases, you really do have to learn how to be still. Like when you're with your kids, be with your kids. When you're at work, be at work, be fully engaged wherever you are. And I think that that's where it's hard for us, because we almost become programmed to just go, go, go. And then you start to lose yourself, and that's when you start to lose balance.
Oh, definitely. One thing we were studying in a segment, and I'll go ahead and throw it out there. I know a lot of people are spiritual, but maybe not religious per se. And I'm somewhere in between there somewhere.
Okay.
I'm not religious by any means. I am a believer and whatnot, but we were studying this series at the non-denominational church that I go to, non-denomination. So it's called Get Over Yourself,
Okay.
humility as opposed to arrogance.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's funny how easy it is. And I think I told you this the other day, to fall into that almost arrogance is ordered of you. Like I worked with one manufacturer, and I almost literally believed that they wanted me to be arrogant. That's how they wanted me to kind of carry myself, was, like you're untouchable, in a way.
Yeah.
So when you walk off that stage and you're like, I know, damn well that's the opposite. You know what I mean? You have those fears, you have those insecurities, like anyone else. Elvis Presley had them.
Right.
So no,
it's crazy to think about that.
What's that now?
It's crazy to think about that, but it's so true. Everybody has them. Yes.
Yeah. And I love what you said, be still. One thing I've been sort of, I won't say I drank the Kool-Aid by any means, but I sort of buying into some of how the Buddhists think. So they say, yesterday's gone. Tomorrow may not happen. So live in the now.
Right.
And I think when you say be still, that kind of speaks to me in that way.
Right.
So.
Yep. That's exactly right. It's just, you get caught in the hustle and bustle, and you forget, your why. You forget your reason. You're not working just to work. When you have, your daughter's 2, right? You said she was 2.
Yes, ma'am.
If you have a little 2-year-old sitting there and you're working, like she's sitting there staring at you while you're not paying any attention to her, be in the moment. Not that you do that. I'm just saying, for you to pay attention and to be still is so important in our lives. And I think especially everybody being connected to their phones and their computers and being plugged in all the time, it makes it very difficult to come back to that. So thank you. Everything you've said is so inspiring, and it's just been so helpful. And I'm sure so many people will truly believe in themselves and realize it's not just them who's fearful. Everybody has those feelings, but it's about pushing through. So, what an amazing career that you've had, and you've had so much success, and I just wish you happiness in your future. And I realize that time is so valuable. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me today.
Oh, no. And thank you for having me. And it was, for me, giving back is what keeps me grounded. You know what I mean? Backtracking to what you asked me right there at the end, how do you sort of find peace and serenity and whatnot? I feel like for me, it's definitely a huge part of it is giving back, sharing.
Yes. How do you do that? How do you share and give back? Just through your information, through knowledge, through education?
Yeah. And I think so. I think definitely through knowledge, education and whatnot, with what we do, but also just personal. One thing I say I've started, I'm kind of playing with the idea. When I talked about sort of that, back to that kind of, going through a dark area and tough times, I've sort of come up with this concept, and I've put some stuff together, but I haven't really turned it into a nonprofit or anything like that. But it's called Barber Recovery. And on the back, it has what we call the barber's prayer. And I won't sit here and read it or quote it to you, but it just basically speaks through everything that you do, from the time you pick your shears up to the time you walk a client out to sharing with them. I think people truly don't know how important our job is to people, more than the technical, more than their haircut.
Right.
sharing with them, making their day better. A book I highly recommend by a good friend of mine, Life as a Daymaker by David Wagner. I don't know if you've ever read it, but
I haven't.
you definitely want to put that one in the queue.
All
And
right.
you
I will do
definitely want to
that.
get that one. It'll even though I know where you're at and I know who you are because I've worked shows with you and I've sat with you at trainings and stuff. I still think it'll be life changing for you.
Awesome. I will definitely do that. That's on my list. If you say so, I will listen, and it is now on my list.
Yeah, but just that, give back to someone, just, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's 5 minutes out of your day, do it, share with someone, and it doesn't have to be hair. It could just be inspirational.
Right.
There's so many things I learned through this process of the last couple of years of just, if I had applied that, to my career 15, 20 years ago, I have no clue where I would be. I mean, I may be further, I may be, living somewhere else. I mean, it's just so interesting how, our brain works, the cortex of it, the limbic system, how we react to certain things and stuff. But so this last 2 years have really just been truly learning, like science of my brain, and then also like spiritually inside, and how it all works together. Because I honestly feel like I knew what I wanted to be and I knew what it took to get there. But I feel like once I got there, I was just sort of living the motions. I was just, like I said, I was just sort of like a robot, clicked on the highest gear you could set me on. And if somebody broke the shut off switch,
Right. You're so funny. I can see that. Yeah, I can completely see that. But I actually had a conversation with some of the people that work at, with America's Salon Academy. I was having a conversation about direction, and I was describing myself as, those like little wind up toys that you wind up and they keep moving, right? Like their feet keep moving, but you have to point them in the right direction. And that's kind of how I was like describing myself, is like, listen, as long as you can keep me in the direction I'm supposed to be going, I'll keep working and I'll keep moving, but I got to know where I'm going,
Right. Exactly. No.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Well, Wallace, again, thank you so much for your time. I think you've given us a lot of things to really think about, and I really appreciate you being so transparent and sharing so much about life and business. I'm excited to see what your future holds and where you go from here.
Oh, thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Colie Otzel. Thanks for downloading the podcast. My hope is that you leave inspired. Make sure to subscribe to get new messages every week. For more education and information, visit americassalonacademy.com.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money for your podcast with minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.